The crowd that had gathered outside the gates of Buckingham Palace buzzed with excitement, each person angling for a better view of the famed royal guards in their striking red coats and towering bearskin hats. Amid the clicking cameras and scattered chatter stood a boy named Ray, his small frame seated in a wheelchair, hands gripping the armrests with a quiet desperation that only a child chasing a dream could understand. He had managed to make his way to the front, but that hadn't stopped taller tourists from pressing in, their bodies forming a living wall between him and the ceremonial spectacle he had yearned for. All around him, voices hummed with anticipation, visitors expecting the usual, a precise, almost mechanical display of discipline, guards moving like clockwork, untouched by the chaos of the crowd. But then, like a ripple in still water, something broke the mold. A guard, statuesque in posture and bound by centuries of tradition, suddenly stepped forward, away from his post, and toward the boy. The murmurs stilled, breaths were held, and for a heartbeat the entire world seemed to pause. Before we dive in, don't forget to like and follow for more powerful stories that will stay with you. Now, let's begin. It was the kind of summer day that painted the sky a perfect blue and made the white marble of Buckingham Palace shine like polished pearl. Families huddled close along the mall, leaning into metal barriers, clutching their phones like lifelines to preserve the memory. Ray's mother, a woman with tired yet kind eyes, stood behind him with one hand on the back of his wheelchair and the other gently resting on his shoulder. This moment was supposed to be a memory, a joyful one, but reality was proving less kind. Towering adults shifted constantly, stepping in front of him, their chatter oblivious to the fact that he could barely see anything at all. Polite attempts from his mother to ask for space were ignored or met with impatient glances. The crowd surged and receded like the ocean, but never parted long enough for Ray to glimpse the guard in full. Still, the boy's eyes stayed fixed on the crimson figure standing tall in the distance. "He's so brave," Ray whispered to himself. "I want to be like that." He didn't know that those words would mark the start of something unforgettable. Then, from the back of the crowd came a disruption louder than the rest. A man with a bulky camera bag bulldozed his way forward, snapping, "Out of the way! I need a clean shot!" Ray's mother tried to explain, tried to reason, but her words bounced off him like pebbles against stone. "He's in a wheelchair," she said. "He can't move." But the man, driven by entitlement, sneered, "I didn't come all the way here to be stuck behind some kid in a chair." The air grew tight with discomfort. A few people turned, some even protested, but the man only scoffed. He hovered behind Ray, still pushing, his camera raised like a weapon of indifference. Ray's mother tried to ease him to the side, but the man followed. Strangers began to shield the small family with their bodies, forming a human wall in silent protest. And yet through it all, the guard ahead remained perfectly still, silent, composed, unblinking. There was something electric in the air, a question no one dared ask aloud. Would the guard stay a monument to duty, or would he act? As the man's behavior escalated, his words growing louder and crueler, the crowd's discomfort turned to disbelief. The man took selfies that blocked Ray's view, then began loudly mocking the guards, calling them overhyped mascots in funny hats. Ray, quiet now, clutched a small Union Jack flag with trembling fingers, tears welling in the corners of his eyes. No one expected what was coming next, and when it happened, it took their breath away. He had begged his mom that morning with eyes full of hope. "Just one picture, please, one where I can actually see the guard." But now, that simple dream felt like sand slipping through his fingers. "Sir, please," his mother tried again, her voice soft but urgent. "My son's been waiting so long for this. Could you just move over a little?" Her words trembled in the air like a violin string stretched too tight. The man responded with a cold, barking laugh. "Your kid's got eyes, doesn't he? Move the chair a bit." The atmosphere thickened. Whispers spread. A teenage girl holding her phone whispered to no one in particular, "This is seriously messed up." Then, as if drawn to the spotlight, the man straightened up and began mimicking the royal guard's stiff pose. "Check it out," he sneered, puffing out his chest and mock saluting. Dude can't even blink. He strutted forward, nearly brushing the guard's face, an invisible line clearly crossed. The soldier didn't flinch. Rigid, focused, expressionless. His fingers rested calmly on the rifle across his chest, his training shouting silently, "Do not react." But the crowd wasn't trained. They gasped as the man leaned in, mugging and clicking photos like he was the star of his own twisted show. And then, just as abruptly, he turned on Ray. "You watching, kid? This is all they do." He leaned in, too close, his voice cutting. Ray recoiled instinctively and clutched his mother's hand, his eyes wide, knuckles white. Then the man lashed out with his foot, kicking the front wheel of Ray's chair as if to clear his own path. It was as if the entire plaza took a breath and held it. Conversations halted mid-sentence. Even the breeze seemed to pause. Surely not even this would make the guard move. Surely not. Ray's mom pulled him closer, her panic obvious, lips trembling. The man snorted. "He's not going to do anything. These guys don't move. Ever." A voice rang out suddenly, firm and angry. "Hey, back off!" More followed. More. A ripple of outrage rolled through the crowd, and people began shifting, instinctively forming a loose barrier between the bully and the boy. Off to the side, a palace official took notice, his hand hovering over his radio. Everything pulsed around one question. Could a figure bound by centuries of immovable discipline really just stand by? Ray's wheelchair quivered slightly from the impact, and the boy, trying to be brave, bit his lip until it turned white. He looked one more time at the guard, searching, pleading, needing more than silence. His mother squeezed his shoulder gently. Then it happened. The guard moved. Barely. Just a turn of the head, a subtle glance. But enough. Gasps scattered like fireworks. "Did he just—" someone whispered, barely daring to believe. It was nothing and everything. A ripple of electricity surged through the crowd. And then, without a single word of warning, the man reached toward the Union Jack flag clutched in Ray's hand, likely to mock it, to flaunt his contempt. But his fingers never made it. In a blur, the guard stepped forward, breaking from his assigned path like a wave breaking through a dam. The sound of his boot on the gravel echoed like a drumbeat of defiance. Cameras clicked in a frenzy. History, in that second, was rewritten not in silence but in action. The royal guard took his place between Ray and the man, his tall frame casting a protective shadow. The bully faltered, suddenly face to face with something unshakable. The crowd could feel it, hearts thundering, eyes wide. Had the soldier really broken rank? Would the palace allow this? And now that he stood face to face with the embodiment of quiet strength, what would the man do? All around them, the air seemed to tighten. Not a sound, not even the usual rustle of shifting feet or clicking cameras. Ray looked up, eyes wide with wonder and uncertainty. Towering above him stood the guard, imposing and resolute, every line of his posture carved from a centuries-old code of discipline. He was the image of ceremonial strength, yet somehow even more daunting up close. Ray's mother stood frozen, mouth parted in disbelief. The man who had caused the disturbance suddenly looked small, his arrogance shrinking beneath the weight of silence. He mumbled something, maybe a weak insult, maybe an excuse, but his voice barely reached past his lips. The guard, unwavering, lifted his free hand and extended it in a clear, commanding gesture. Stop. The moment balanced on a razor's edge. Would he speak? Would he remove the man from the scene? The hush that fell over the courtyard was so profound it seemed as though all of London had gone still, waiting to see which way the moment would bend. Then, with a steady step, the guard positioned himself fully between Ray and the man, shielding the boy completely. For a heartbeat, it seemed like everything might boil over. But then the guard turned his head, just slightly, and let his eyes settle on Ray. There, just beneath the surface of his rigid expression, a flicker of something else broke through. Warmth, recognition, maybe even kindness. And then, without a single word of permission, the unimaginable unfolded. The guard slowly lowered himself to one knee. It was like watching stone soften. He met Ray eye to eye, his rifle still secured in one hand, while the other gently rested on the boy's armrest. That small, quiet touch spoke louder than any formal declaration. The crowd seemed to inhale all at once, their breath stolen by the quiet grace of it. Even the man who moments ago had towered with entitlement stood there slack-jawed, rendered useless by the sight. The guard's voice, steady but laced with something softer, something profoundly human, finally broke the silence. "Are you all right, young man?" The words reached Ray like sunlight breaking through a storm. He nodded slowly, and though no tears fell, his eyes glistened with emotion. He'd never imagined a real royal guard would speak to him, much less kneel, much less care. The words felt like a warm current, melting every edge of fear and shame that had clung to the moment. His mother pressed her hand to her chest, breathless, her heart pounding like a war drum in her ears. And then, as though scripted by something deeper than tradition, the guard reached out and gently placed his gloved hand over Ray's. The gesture was simple, but it unraveled something in the crowd. Whispers began to rise. Cameras flashed in quiet awe. Even the palace official, who earlier seemed on the verge of stepping in, stood motionless, humbled. The code of silence the guards were sworn to uphold had cracked, just for a moment. But in that moment, everything changed. It wasn't about rules anymore. It was about grace. The square behind them faded to a blur. The heckler, now just a shadow, mumbled something resembling an apology and slowly slinked away, forgotten. All focus had shifted to the boy and the soldier. Some wiped their cheeks, barely realizing tears had escaped. In the middle of it all, Ray whispered, voice trembling but clear, "I just wanted to see you up close. I think you're so brave." The guard offered a nearly invisible nod, then answered with quiet humility, "I'm just doing my job, sir." But peace never stays untouched for long. From the corner of the crowd, another figure in uniform emerged, a second guard, likely a superior. He approached, his expression unreadable. He glanced from the kneeling guard to the crowd, the tension in his brow suggesting uncertainty. Had the line been crossed too far? The guard who'd knelt slowly stood, shoulders squared, the dignity of his choice radiating from every movement. He looked ready to accept whatever came next. Ray's mother pressed her lips together, the weight of uncertainty tightening in her chest. A part of her feared that the guard's tender gesture might earn him reprimand, or worse, for showing a moment of humanity in a place built on ceremony. The silence returned like a held breath, stretching long and fragile across the courtyard, everyone waiting to see how the palace would respond. And then, something quietly remarkable happened. The second guard, eyes steady and shoulders square, offered the faintest bow of his head and stepped to the side, granting space for his comrade to guide Ray's wheelchair forward toward the barricade. It was a silent but powerful gesture, an unspoken affirmation that, sometimes, compassion must take precedence over protocol. The crowd, caught in the delicate grace of the moment, broke into gentle applause. It was the kind of applause that isn't loud or showy, but deeply felt, filled with admiration and relief. Though the guard's face remained composed, a subtle gleam in his eyes betrayed what words could not. This moment mattered. Ray's face lit up with unfiltered joy, his dream not only fulfilled but exceeded in the most unexpected way. As the ceremony resumed, the guard remained by Ray's side for a few extra seconds, ensuring the boy had a clear view of every movement. The synchronized clack of polished boots, the elegant spin of crimson jackets and shining medals. His mother leaned down and whispered a soft, "Thank you," her tears now freely spilling, as though her heart had finally exhaled. The guard nodded slightly, barely perceptible, but more than enough. Across the courtyard, the man who had stirred so much chaos tried to slip away unnoticed, but two palace officials intercepted him with quiet efficiency. The crowd watched as he was calmly escorted out, his swagger replaced with shame. The changing of the guard, despite the earlier disruption, continued flawlessly, as if nothing had broken the age-old rhythm. But those who stood witness knew the truth. Something unforgettable had happened. When the last soldier marched out of view, the first guard stayed behind, gently escorting Ray and his mother to a quieter corner by the gates. He cleared the way, a silent shield of dignity and care. Spectators snapped photos, captured videos, and within minutes, social media buzzed with headlines like "Royal Guard breaks protocol to help disabled boy," a moment that melted hearts. That day, beneath the grandeur of a centuries-old institution, something simple and profound had taken root. As Ray and his mom prepared to head home, the guard offered one last salute. Ray grinned from ear to ear, raising his small flag in return like a soldier answering his commander. His mother mouthed, "Thank you," one final time, her voice caught in her throat. And then the guard returned to his post, still as stone, but everyone who'd seen him that day knew he was not the same. Spontaneous applause rippled through the crowd once more, not for tradition or royalty, but for something far rarer, humanity wrapped in duty. Buckingham Palace, for all its ceremony, had felt, if only for a moment, like the heart of something beautifully personal. That evening, clips of the encounter swept across the internet, gathering millions of views in mere hours. Major news outlets covered it, praising the guard's integrity and empathy. Some debated decorum, others questioned the boundaries of military conduct. But across all platforms, one truth echoed louder than the rest. That gentle act had lifted spirits across the world. Later that night, at home, Ray watched the video again and again on his mom's phone, a smile permanently etched on his face. When asked how it felt, he simply said, "I've never felt more seen." The following morning, a brief statement from palace officials acknowledged the moment. While reaffirming the value of tradition and discipline, they also recognized that in exceptional circumstances, compassion carries its own kind of honor. It was a quiet reckoning, a moment not only for the storied traditions behind the palace gates, but also for the millions around the world who found hope in a soldier's choice. Because kindness, even when wrapped in centuries of formality, still finds its way through. And if one soldier's decision to kneel could inspire that much light, who's to say what else is possible? The crowd dispersed that day not just with photos or video, but with a story they would tell for years. A story not about a ceremony, but about courage, kindness, and the power of breaking from routine to choose empathy instead. For Ray, it was more than just a wish fulfilled. It was proof that even in the most rigid places, a human heart can still lead. With the soft squeak of his wheelchair echoing against the stone pathway, Ray rolled away from the palace grounds with something new glimmering in his heart. A quiet, glowing belief that maybe, just maybe, a bit of real-life magic still existed in the world. After all, the one person sworn to never move had taken a step. Just for him. So what about you? What do you think? Was it the right choice for the guard to set aside tradition for the sake of one boy's simple dream? Do you believe that sometimes compassion should be greater than protocol? Tell us your thoughts in the comments below. If this story left a mark on your heart, give it a like and pass it along to someone who could use a reminder of how powerful a single kind act can be. And if you're hungry for more stories that lift the spirit, you won't want to miss what's coming next. Because in our next video, something unbelievable happened when a tourist decided to challenge a royal guard mid-parade. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss a story that reminds us all of the quiet power of humanity. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.